Hi everybody, welcome to the Top 2 Inches of Sport podcast with me, Anthony Sheriff. This is a podcast about something that's always fascinated me, the mindset required to succeed in elite level sport. On this podcast, I'm going to talk to people who I really look up to in the world of sport and try to find out how they deal with the highs and lows that come with consistently striving for success in the unforgiving environment of elite sport. This week, I spoke to a footballing legend on Merseyside. Kevin Ratcliffe is the most successful captain in the history of Everton Football Club, having lifted 2 league titles, an FA Cup and the European Cup Winners' Cup as captain of the club. Speak to any Evertonian about the glory days of the club and they will inevitably speak of the great side of the 1980s that Kevin captained to so much success. In this episode, Kevin describes what life was like at Everton under their legendary manager, the late, great Howard Kendall, and he talks about the impact that Howard had at the club at that time. He discusses what sports psychology looked like at a top club in the 80s, and he talks about how the game has changed since his playing days. He talks about how he handled the pressure of captaining Everton and Wales and what lessons he took with him into football management. It was fascinating hearing all of Kevin's stories, and hopefully you enjoy listening to them as well. So here's this week's episode of the Top 2 Inches of Sport with today's guest, Everton legend, Kevin Ratcliffe. Right. We're recording. Right, Kevin, thanks very, very much for taking the time to come and speak to me about the mentality of sport. Really appreciate it. So, obviously, you were a boyhood Evertonian. So, I think most young lads' dream is to go on and, play for their football club. You went on to actually become Everton's most successful ever captain. So, at what stage would you say the mentality shifted from just a dream, like most young lads have, into actually a goal that you think, actually, that's very achievable, I can play for Everton?
That's a question I've never been asked before. I think when you break into the first team, I don't think you take anything for granted. That's for sure. There, I think when I was made captain,
really, yeah,
that is that you actually think that you've achieved, as in becoming a first team player, a regular, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, because obviously you're not being made a captain for no reason at all.
Yeah.
It was one of them that it gave me a little bit more confidence as well.
Yeah.
And I think I just went to that next stage then from that.
Yeah.
As in, you become sort of a leader type of thing. But up until then, you were just like a squad player and just making sure you wanted to, you were picked for selection for the next week. It was, it was tough going, but. It's one, where you're looking back now that, the change for me was like when I was made captain, that all of a sudden when your manager's got that little bit more faith in you, it does bring a little bit more out of you.
Definitely, yeah. I will talk about maybe like your first team career a bit more as we go on. But just going back to when you became an apprentice, was it always Everton or was there any other clubs sniffing around you at the time as well?
Yeah, I had Tottenham, Man City, with the 2 Premier League clubs, the old First Division clubs that were after me. Burnley had shown a little bit of interest, and after that it was Chester or Wrexham, and out of the 2, it would have been Chester. And I think I dismissed Man City and Tottenham because I didn't like it. I didn't like the, shall we say, the players the same age as me didn't make me feel wanted.
Really, yeah.
So Tottenham was a little bit far away as well, and to go away from home and sort of, I think I wasn't too far off the Broadwater estate. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. Back in the day, I think that's where the riots were.
All right.
And the policeman had had his head hacked off. So it wasn't the best of areas I was staying in. I felt a little bit uncomfortable in that environment down there. And then Manchester City, it was just an instant dislike to the local lads, really. That didn't really make us feel well, especially me and a couple of other Welsh lads that were there.
Yeah. Okay, so obviously you were in the old apprentice system, so very different than today. I think nowadays, particularly in the top clubs, if you're in the academy nowadays, I mean, before you kick a ball as a professional, you could be borderline millionaire already, and best of luck to them. But what was the apprentice system like back then? like how tough was it? And do you think from a mental point of view, do you think that helped develop your mental strength for when you were eventually ready to make the step up to first team football?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. I think that's why you get a lot more issues now with mental health, is the way that the way that not just the players, but kids in general, in school, right the way through. It's more of a, be careful what you say type of thing, pat on the back. You've got to remember, places like Everton, you're playing in front. It's the same at smaller clubs as well. Lower down the leagues, that you've got to go out and perform in front of a crowd.
Yeah.
So if you can't take that type of sort of banter, as it was, and I suppose it was near on bullying as well. That's, how can you play in front of 50,000 fans that are shouting for your blood? And sometimes your own fans. That, if things aren't going too well, it's quite a hostile environment. How do you overcome that if you're not mentally strong? So it's there was a little bit of mental toughness in them days, as in coming through the system right the way through. When you did your apprentices, depending when you were 18. At 18 years of age, you had to be told 3 months before your birthday if they want to sign you or not. So it's depending when you left school in the July, and you were straight into apprenticeship. You didn't even get a holiday with your family. So you're straight into your apprenticeship, and my birthday was in the November, which I was 17. So I literally had about a year and 4 months, 3 or 2 months to actually prove myself that I was good enough for a contract.
Yeah. Cool. And then moving on to your actual first team career, I want to talk about when Howard Kendall came in. Now, obviously, anyone watching this, I'm sure, knows who Howard Kendall is, but if they don't, he's a legendary figure in Everton, the most successful manager they've had. So he came in May 1981, and he was actually the last time Everton had won a league before he came in. He was a player in that squad. When he came in, like, tactics aside and new signings aside, did he just change the culture of the club? Did he bring a new mentality to the squad?
Look, every manager is different, but Howard come in. I think I just got married that pre-season, so he come in really the sort of beginning of the new season before you actually started back training.
Yeah.
And obviously, I got married in that period. I got into training, and I had to go straight to hospital to have a wisdom tooth removed. And I got out, and he asked to see me. Now, when you just sort of, knocking on the door to try and get into the team type of thing, he asked me to his room. I went to his room, and then he gave me a present for my wedding. He said it was off the club, but I don't think anybody else had one off the club before with the previous manager. So obviously it was his idea, and that was a feeling. Ooh, he knows your name. He wants to give you a new contract, which was all nice. So you may make. He had this. If he liked you, he liked you. If he didn't, you were out.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not until later on you realise that. But at that time, it was nice to feel wanted when you're a 21-year-old, 20-year-old.
Yeah. So obviously, what you're talking about there really is his man management skills. Was that a real strength of his? Did he make you really feel a part of the club?
It didn't matter if you were 19 or you were 29. He treated you the same.
Yeah.
He expected the same on the pitch from you as a 29-year-old. So a 20-year-old, 19-year-old, whatever. And that was his forte, really. That he treated the youngsters as adults. Yeah. Just as much as the adults, and that was good. That was good, and obviously, with us all being pretty young, I think he realised that we weren't quite sure at the time. I think the likes of me and Graham Sharp, who was at the club, and Gary Stevens and Kevin Richardson, who were a lot younger than us. I don't think, I don't know if Howard actually thought that we weren't quite ready or weren't quite good enough. Yeah. When we went in, well, I'm still not sure. I never asked him that question, but it's nice to sort of think that we, sort of, you'd like to think that he was giving us time to actually mature.
Yeah. And would he have been an approachable man? So if you were maybe left out for a game, was he the type of manager you could knock on his door and have an adult conversation about why?
Yeah, I don't think you couldn't, have too much. The only problem like you say, when you're 20 years of age, you're quite naive, and you're not as confident as a 20 or late 20s person knocking on people's door and asking why you're left out, or what can I do to make myself better. But I don't think Howard had too many players knocking on his door. I think mainly because of the way that he sort of picked you, and then if he did leave you out, he'd give an explanation.
Yeah. In terms of the setup of the club there, because obviously sports psychology is still quite a new concept even now in 2020. Was there any type of sports psychology in the club at that time? Did you ever have anybody go in and speak to you about the mental side of sport, or was that just not really a thing back then?
That was Howard.
Howard,
the manager was everything.
Yeah.
And if you think about the managers that of them days, there was no psychology at all, and there was no diets as such unless you were overweight. Yeah, I mean, no, there was nothing. There was nothing available to you, and I think it's only later on now, in the last 10 to 20 years, maybe you've seen that. And like I say, I think it's because of society. I don't think the players back in that day needed, because your manager was everything, your coach was the other one as well, and the older players.
Yeah.
The older players. I mean, I've seen, psychologists go in, or I can't believe it nowadays, is that, these psychologists that go in, why don't the clubs use ex-players? And how did you deal with that situation?
Yeah,
they could work together with the psychologist, because the psychologist very rarely has been in that situation, because he's never been a footballer.
Definitely, yeah.
And it's a different way. And I honestly think the best psychologist for a sports person is a sports person that's actually done that. If you're an athlete, as in, Olympian or whatever sport, if it's race, running or whatever, or if it's shot putting, your mentality is completely different if you're a one-man sport to a 11-man sport, or a 15 or 14-man sport. So it's for me, it's completely different. Like I say, I think people are a lot stronger then than what they are now, mentally stronger then than what they are now. And I think maybe 20, 30 years before us, they were a lot stronger than what we were.
Maybe.
Because of the way that you're brought up and everything.
So you mentioned there that Howard was kind of a psychologist in his role. Now, is it true? I heard that on occasion, when maybe results weren't going your way, did he used to take the squad out and have like a big Chinese, where you'd almost have a big conversation, just put everything out on the table, and maybe a bit of self-examination?
Yeah, without you really knowing it. It's amazing what a few drinks can do to you. Loosens the tongue, and then you start pointing fingers. And he was very good at that. The timing of it was very good. It was usually on a Monday afternoon. So you do the training in the morning, then you'd go to the Chinese in Southport, and it was all paid for. And he just let people go. He'd sort of, get the fishing rod out and throw the bait in, and sort of wind people in to sort of, and knew when it was time that that's enough. But
sorry, go on.
It worked. No doubt about it. It worked. It seemed to work anyway.
So was there usually a positive boost after that in terms of results and just general morale?
Yeah, morale was the one. I think Howard's forte was getting a good team spirit.
Yeah.
That was very good forte, in the right people in the right place. The ones that he didn't think were going to set, that really weren't going to fit in and disrupt it, they were out the door. They wouldn't, even if he brought them in. As soon as he brought them in, they'd be back out. He was very quick in seeing this is not fitting. This, there's one or two, and I don't really want to mention who that is, but he sussed them out, and he thought, well, this is. I've got a pretty young squad, so this young squad can't be, sort of swayed by, an experienced player or whatever, because the ones that he didn't, or the ones that he brought in and wanted to get out after a while, they were more experienced.
Yeah. So in terms of you personally then, and how you used to prepare for a game, In the dressing room before a game, was you going to player that maybe suffered with nerves, or were you pretty calm?
I think everybody's nervous in one way or another. I always had a problem if I wasn't nervous. I was a little bit worried that where's the nerves. But more often than not, when you're travelling in from an early morning, the one thing I didn't like was a break-in routine. Anybody to disturb that. And where I used to live, I used to have obviously a few Evertonians around, but my ritual really on a Saturday for a home game was 11 o'clock bath. At past 11, I'd be making me poached eggs and beans, and he didn't want anything to disrupt that. And then you'd be leaving round about sort of 1 o'clock, maybe earlier than that, half 12, to get to the ground for about half 1. And I always remember there was a period when there was a guy round the corner who used to come round and knock on my door just before 11 o'clock. And, without trying to be too rude to him, I was trying to, not speak to him. And, he was just trying to wish me luck for the game. But he was disrupting my routine in a way. And if anything broke it, you were like a bear with a sore head, and quite worried really, and that, your performance wasn't the same. Away from home, I always found it hard to get into a routine away from home, I must admit. And I think that's why results in general, when you're away from home, to the majority, not to the elite clubs, the way that they prepare, is that you've got to try and find a way to prepare that suits you. And sometimes not everybody else, and not the manager and not the coaches. And, it's what suits you. I always made sure that I wanted a room with somebody that was maybe on a par with me, as in what time he gets up, what time he goes to bed. And lucky enough, I had Kevin Sheedy. So Kevin Sheedy was somebody who we used to get up for breakfast, go down for breakfast, go back to bed around about 9:30. And then 11 o'clock-ish, we'd go and have a walk with the rest of the guys. And then if we had a piece of toast or a cup of coffee, that was about it. We would have had a breakfast, a couple of hours before. But it's finding that routine for yourself. But I must admit, early on in my career, the amount of times I went back to my room and I was like absolutely shattered, knackered. I tried sleeping tablets, but they seem to make me more tired on the day of the game than at night. So I seem to not sleep at night and then sleep the next day. But it's amazing how you sort of wake up. And I always remember an afternoon, if we played at night and we were away in a hotel, that you go down and you'd have about an hour's kip in the afternoon, and then you go down, have your pre-match, and then you get to your room and sort of prepare getting your showers or baths before the game. I was absolutely drained. I'd be thinking, how can I get going in this game today? And then, on the way to the ground, everything had changed. That was it. Yeah.
And in the minutes leading up to kick-off, because obviously football was a far different game back then. It was a tougher game. So saying that 10, 15 minutes before kick-off, were you the type of player that maybe needed to almost get angry? Did you need to pump yourself up, or did you go the other way and just focus on your performance and go calm?
Yeah, I was quite quiet in the changing room. Yeah. I'd be looking around, we'd be having a laugh and a joke, trying to sort of calm people's nerves if they were nervous, but not intentionally, if you know what I mean. It was just a thing that I did.
Yeah.
Going around, we'd still be playing pranks on the day of the game. People might say, well, you weren't focused on the game. It was our way of maybe getting the nervousness out of you, if you know what I mean. And everybody's different. Manager was brilliant. Once again, before he'd get you focused by doing, I wouldn't say they were stupid little games, because they worked. For the whole squad, which was 11 of us on one sub at them days. And he played this sort of opposites, where he'd throw you the ball, and if he said head it, he caught it. If he said catch, you had to head it. So it was, and then you were eliminated one by one, if you know what I mean, until there was only two of you left. It was, and on the other hand, when you used to go to a game, an away game, and we were on the coach, used to have a game of Chase the Ace on the back, and everybody had to put £1 in, and there was like £16 at stake. if you know what I mean. And them days, that was a lot of money.
Right, yeah.
And yeah. So that was a little bit of banter on the back of the bus going to the game. You'd only have about 2 or 3 games but by the lot of you on it, but it was just getting everybody together and keeping them together. It was very good at that, like I said. And I think managers in them days were the psychologists. They had a couple of jobs. They were also the coaches, and they were everything.
Yeah,
absolutely everything.
And you mentioned earlier about when Howard made you captain. Why do you think? Because he made you captain very young. I think you were 22 years of age, maybe 23. Now, for a top club, I think usually you'd see somebody get the armband maybe 25, 26 earliest. There is examples, obviously, maybe Gerrard and Terry, I think, got it young as well. But maybe Grealish now. But at 22, what do you think he saw in you, even off the pitch? What qualities and values do you think he saw in you to make him think, that's my captain?
I don't know, because he'd made Mark Higgins the captain before. And Iggy was still only like 24. He was only about 24. Iggy 25. He was only about 2 or 3 years older than me, so he was pretty young as well. But obviously, he picked up the injury. But I think I was a little bit amazed first when I first got it. Up in Scotland in a pre-season game, and Iggy was left out just to rest, really, so that everybody got games. And he just sort of, I don't think there was an armband then. He just said, like, go and lead them out, rats. And I'm like, when you're looking around the room and you see lads at 28, 29, and you're thinking, why me and not them? And I'm just sort of like, you got Peter Reid in there. But, I mean, Peter wasn't a regular then. There was no Andy Gray at the time. There was David Johnson, Mickey Walsh, Alan Ainscough, Mick Ferguson. So, it was a bit sort of, taken back a bit. And that was the same with Wales as well.
Yeah.
I think I was 22, 23. Well, it'd be about 23 for Wales. 22, I think it was again. And, you got Joey Jones, Alan Curtis, Robbie James, Nicky Thomas in the room. And, the sort of honours given to you up in Scotland to go out against Scotland. Graham Souness, was standing alongside me in the tunnel. I'm thinking, I wonder if he knows me. Obviously he did, because he was playing at Liverpool at the time. But it was really odd.
Did your pre-match routine change when you became captain? Did you feel responsibility for any of the other boys, or did you just same as?
No. The only responsibility as a captain when you become the full captain of Everton was the tickets on match days, where you had lounge tickets and match tickets to give out, and used to get them on the Friday. But the lounge tickets I had at home, and I also had a stamp on what day it was with the date and everything. And so on a Friday night, that's what I used to do: sit up doing the lounge tickets, where I think everybody got 3 if you were playing. I think the staff, meaning Howard and Colin, they got about 10 between them. Because there's obviously you've got your physio, you've got 2 coaches and Howard. So they got about 10 tickets between them. And there was more pressure on that than on the game for me. Me dealing with tickets and giving the tickets out, if you know what I mean. You didn't really have the match tickets, but you did have the lounge. And everybody wanted, tickets. I'd be getting people phoning me up and asking me. I know there was one guy phoned me up on a Friday night, and he said, is there any chance you can throw a few more tickets into braces for me? And I went, into Paul Bracewell's. He said, but you already get Paul Bracewell's tickets. He went, yeah. I said, I'm not being funny, but if I give you 6 tickets or 5 tickets, you're getting 2 more than any player. So why should you get more than the players? And I'm like, I don't need this, really. I don't need this. And I always remember when I thought it was it was quite funny, really, in one way, but I was disappointed in the other. When Dave Watson took over the captaincy, it was a relief that I was actually giving him the lounge tickets and the stamp for him. I think that's one less hassle. That is one job I am glad I'm not doing now. But
apparently, I think it's still the same. Apparently, I heard Jordan Henderson talking about one of the things he hates about being Liverpool captain is, or the only thing he probably doesn't like, is doing the tickets. I would have thought nowadays that would have been phased out of the game, but I think they still have to do all that ticket sorting, captains.
Yeah. Well, we had the lounge, in the lounge with the players' lounge. Like I say, the players' lounge is called the players' lounge because it is the players' lounge. Nobody else goes in there other than the wives and close friends. It was. It was. Yeah, I found more pressure than that, and dealing with that more of a hassle than actually playing on the Saturday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about then in terms of really big games you played? So, for example, the 1984 FA Cup final, I think you beat Watford 2-0. Am I correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, and
yeah.
so are you 24 years of age captaining a team there? So
no,
are you
20,
able to
23?
23, geez, yeah.
23. So, I think I'm the youngest captain since Bobby Moore.
Really, yeah.
I think Steven Gerrard could have broke it.
I don't think so, because he was 2000.
No, he could have. He could have.
Really?
He had the opportunity to break my record, yeah.
Oh,
yeah. But he didn't. They lost. Great.
I'm a Liverpool supporter, so I won't celebrate that.
Yeah, well, you don't remember that one that you lost, do you? You did lose a few.
Forget about those, yeah. But are you able to, when you're going into a game of that size, is it easy to kind of go through your usual pre-match process, or is the enormity of the occasion, does that just add added extra pressure?
No, I think that it was. Yeah, obviously you're more nervous playing an FA Cup final than you're playing maybe a normal league game against a Notts Forest, or I would say the bigger games that you play. Then you're nervous anyway. But I think any game, FA Cup game, you're going to be more nervous than any other game. Even maybe the derby games. Yeah. I picked on Notts Forest there, but I mean, yeah, you could say that even Liverpool in the league would be. It'd be more nervous going into it. But, it was all sort of, like I say, Howard playing his psychology game again by sort of the next morning allowing Freddie Starr to be at the hotel.
I saw a clip of that, yeah.
And doing bits for TV, which really sort of, look, you don't want to sort of say take your mind off the game, but yeah, in a way that is taking your nervousness away from thinking about the game. And you always, it doesn't matter where you are, the last thing you want to be doing in a cup final is making a mistake. And that's what goes into your mind. You don't want to be making a mistake, whatever type of mistake you've got in your head. Well, no, he was good at that.
Obviously, you were captain of Everton throughout the 80s. Now, that was a period in England. Obviously, you've got Thatcher's government and things like that. Now, Liverpool as a city probably was struggling a bit at the time. I mean, there was areas of the city where unemployment was over 90% in certain parts of the city. Now, Liverpool is obviously, it's a football mad city. So no matter how bleak things were for people or how bleak times were, there's always Saturday at 3:00. So football is that kind of escapism. So
yeah,
do you almost feel like you're representing a city that is not being represented by their own government, if you like? So does that bring almost an extra pressure because it's so important for people's lives?
I think you only realise that once you've finished playing.
Really, yeah.
Yeah, because, how many 22, 23, 24-year-olds actually think about, the government when you're playing, when you're doing what you want to do.
Yeah, that's true.
We did realise that there was hardships, but all we were doing was playing what we. There was hardships. Believe it or not, there was hardships on the players as well because we were getting punished by having to pay 60% tax. There was 14.5% on a mortgage. So, it was tough on us as well.
Yeah.
But the good thing for us is we were earning and we were entertaining, and thankfully for we give something to the city to talk about. And I think not just us, I think the music did as well. The groups that were coming through at that period were really sort of, I think the groups were most probably inspired by the hardships of everybody. So it was good. It was a good sort of, I think it brought the city even closer. if I'm being honest, that the two sides in the city were actually doing really, really well, and battling it out to be number one. So,
I mean, you're probably the two best teams almost in Europe for a couple of years throughout the 80s, weren't you?
I think so. I think nobody would have liked to have played against us at home or abroad, and we were much wanted to actually go and play abroad. The pre-seasons tell you that the pre-season games got better. You got to go to better places. So yeah, it was like you say. It's only when you look back over the period you realise how really tough it was for people. Even though we knew it was tough for people, but to think out what it was like now, thinking back, it was even tougher than you thought.
Yeah, and you mentioned Howard Kendall obviously playing the psychology role. Did he ever mention, did he ever talk about the hardships in the city at the time in giving team talks about linking it to how you're representing those people?
I think only when when we went away to games.
Yeah.
As in the fact that you don't want to be letting these down. Look at them; they've come all this way. They spent us what money they've got, and how the hell they've got here, I don't know. I'm sure they hadn't paid to get to some places, bumping on trains and things like that. But I remember an instance down in Stoke where he opened the window and in an FA Cup game, and he says, "Look, you've got to be doing it for these." And I think there was 20,000 in the game, and at Stoke in them days 14,000 were Evertonians. So it was. Don't let them down. It's one of them. That's he didn't really need to say too much. Once we got on a roll, and the Evertonians started following us. I mean, we only had to go for a warm up and see them. That we knew we couldn't let them down. So it was, they did play a big part in it. There's no doubt about that.
In terms of your international career, then I think you've 59 caps for Wales. Is that correct?
Yeah.
59 caps for Wales. Now, you didn't qualify for a major tournament during that time, but I was looking over the record. You came very, very close on a couple of occasions. So how would you reflect now on your international career? Do you think maybe it was a missed opportunity? Do you think there was something lacking in the setup at the time, or it was just unfortunate?
I think the big one we missed out was early on in my career, and Mike England was in charge, and I think we needed to win against Iceland at the Vetch and at Swansea's old ground, and he picked a side with 7 Swansea players in it, and we played a very, very much attacking team. I think all that Mike talked about was we were going to win, but how many we were going to win by. And he picked such an attacking side out that me and Joey Jones were centre backs with a guy called Peter Nicholas, who was at Arsenal at the time. But he played Peter Nicholas as a sweeper. And that we were the only 3 defenders. I wouldn't call. I think Peter Nicholas was a defending midfield player, but he wasn't a defender.
Okay.
And I think we drew the game. The floodlights went out after about 20 minutes, and was out for about 45 minutes. So you can imagine that, and the pitch was wobbly as hell, as usual in them days. But I remember that it was, if I look through the team, I think me, Joey. I think it was Peter Nicholas and one other that weren't playing for Swansea at the time. And it was, Swansea were in the, I think they were in the what is the Premiership now, the Championship, League One, that they were in it, and he picked quite a few, and I think Leighton James was in that, Alan Curtis, Di Davis. It was just so like flipping gun ho, if you know what I mean. So you've left the door open for them, and I think we drew the game 2-2, and I'm sure that was the end of the career for quite a few of the lads. I think Terry Yorrop played in. Did Terry Yorrop? I don't think Terry Yorrop played in that game. Yeah, so it was a strange setup the way that we played.
Yeah,
it just seemed that just go out there and score goals type of thing, and you 3 just keep it tight in the back. I'm thinking, well,
it's tough ask,
yeah, very much.
Yeah. So in terms of throughout your international and your club career, what players, if you could name a couple, did you play with that you would say were extremely mentally strong? So just really, really driven and almost like laser-like focus when it came to match day. Is there anybody that stands out?
Well, Nev, obviously in goal. Rushy, his routine was pretty much the same. As if he must have had nerves, but he just, as if nothing bothered him. Mark Hughes,
yeah,
they were like so, mentally strong. You could see that mentally strong lads. But if you put me on the spot, them three guys, and that's why they were top of the game anyway. Yeah. And then one of the reasons we didn't qualify for a lot of games was that our squad was in depth, wasn't good enough. You say, oh, you had Hughes, you had, Blackmore, you had Phillips, Ratcliffe, and Southall, Horn, and through the time. And I'm thinking, yeah, but if they weren't there, what were you picking?
Yeah.
And if things weren't going right, we never had anything on the bench to come and make a difference. There weren't people on the bench that could come off it. I mean, we, we weren't if we had fully fit 11 players, then we weren't too bad. But we had to have them 11 players, and we had nothing on the bench really that was going to change the game for us and make a difference. You're having to call on lads from Cardiff and Wrexham and Port Vale, Charlton, who were in the lower divisions then, and they did as well as they could. They were made welcome when they come in. But you've got to remember they were playing in the lower divisions, and they never really got a move to go and play in the higher divisions either. Some of them, so it was, that was international football then for us. But we didn't blame them on anything. It was, we did come close, and I think we did ever so well to get as close as we did with the squad that we had.
Definitely, yeah. When you were finished playing, then you went on to manage Shrewsbury and Chester City. I think you even knocked Everton out of the 2003 FA Cup. Is that correct, with Shrewsbury?
Yeah. We knocked them out, and then we never won a game after that and got relegated. So out of the league, which was a massive disappointment. Probably the most disappointing thing in my career. It's management was. I did it for 8.5 years. Enjoyed it. I just felt that the game was changing. I think players were changing. They were seeming to rule the roost rather than the manager.
Yeah.
And being able to do and get away with whatever they want. And I wasn't brought up that way, and I found it very, very hard to accept in a way to deal with it. Yeah.
So obviously you would have played at the very, very top level. I mean, you won league titles, like you said, which is now the Premier League.
Yeah.
With Everton, so you played with top pros, but then you were managing that at a lower level with Shrewsbury and Chester. Would you, if you were to compare the players you played with and the players you managed, obviously technically the players you played with are just far superior, but was there a difference mentally in terms of how they dealt with pressure, would you say? Or is it just purely a technical, physical skill thing?
I think technically they can't take things in as much.
Yeah.
I always used to say that when you receive the ball, you've got to have a picture, and depending how good of a player you are, the picture changes.
Yeah.
So from a lower league club player maybe gets just a picture. You go to the Premier League and he has a couple of pictures, and then you're an international player, and all of a sudden he's got that many pictures. And it's depending how good he is which picture he chooses.
Yeah.
And then when you're playing with players that can't even focus, you do. But the one thing with it is, I just wanted to go in, manage, coach, and I got a satisfaction actually making players better.
Yeah.
And I thought that's what I did when I was part of it, that I made players actually better. The advice, you could give them a little bit of tips, certain things. I had a good record of sort of selling young kids coming through, and turning them into a little bit of a valuation really. And that's, I got a satisfaction from that.
Yeah.
That, from actually, turning some players into a couple of £100,000 players in them days. And, there was a few disappointments where the players didn't get the move. But, I think there's, if you don't get the money as a manager to actually go and win promotion, then I think you've got to try and bring kids through and then make a little bit of money. Then I think that's the two clubs that I went to. Didn't realise that at the time, especially at Shrewsbury, more than maybe Chester. Chester was a battle, and it was an education, as in it was my first job. But then, takeovers, administration takeovers, all that coming, it does make you stronger. And leaving the club, maybe I was there for 4 or 5 years or something, and I think I made them. In the time I was there, over £1 million. And I mean, by sorting pre-season games out and attracting the bigger clubs, your Manchester Cities, your Evertons and Tranmeres that were big then, who would bring in a decent crowd. Yeah. And then, sort of players going out the door for a couple of 100,000 here and there. And then when you left, you've still got maybe over £500,000 worth of players that should have gone on and done better. Oh, well, they did. Some of them did. And the same at Shrewsbury. I think I went to Shrewsbury and the club was £700,000 in debt, and I left it with £600,000 in credit. And we turned down a bid for just under £1 million on 2 players. So, overall, over the period of time you've been there, the success is off the pitch and not on it. Yeah. On the pitch, at that level, and most levels really, you are what you are and what your budget is. I always remember the chairman at Shrewsbury asked me, what will it take you to get to? Well, he says, I'm a great believer in that your budget tells you where you should be in the league. And he actually thought the players were being paid really, really well. And he said, where do you think we should be in the league then? I said, well, by our budget, about 4th from bottom. And he just looked at me and thought, well, I don't know what he thought really, but I was just telling him the truth. I think we're about 4th, maybe 6th from bottom, as in the pay. And he said, well, when I get to speak to this year, I said, yeah, but them chairmen are only telling you what you want. They want you to hear. Yeah. At Chester, we punched above our weight I think, for the whole period I was there. Yeah. With the money we were paying players.
Yeah. And the way, when you're coaching on the pitch with players, are you taking a lot from from your experiences with Howard Kendall and other top coaches, or do you have to very much be your own man?
I think you have to be quite repetitive when you're lower down than maybe when you're higher up, because usually, what makes a great player is you tell them once. If you have to tell them again, they're not worth telling. It sinks in, it gets in. Yeah. But lower down, you can't be like that. You persevere, you get into them, you do set piece after set piece. And I always remember it was a ritual on a Friday to just go through set pieces for and against. And I remember doing this on a Friday. Pick your side, put your players in the position you want to be for like corners against, or free kicks for. And then the next day before the game, you get your clipboard out and you do exactly the same. You show them on the clipboard that this is where you are from yesterday, blah, blah, blah. No changes. That's where you are. And the first corner you get against you, one of the players ain't in his position. And you just go, well, that's why they're playing here. That is the reason. So, you can be angry about it, but that is
their level.
Just that little thing. If I could change that player's mentality, as in thinking what to do on a Saturday, I've made an improvement to him. So it was, that was a challenge. It was a challenge, believe me, but it was a good challenge. I enjoyed it.
Cool. Right, there's 2 questions I ask everybody that comes on. So the first one is, what athlete, past or present, do you admire most from a mentality point of view, and why? It can be any sport.
There'd be a couple, I think, if I look back. I thought Daley Thompson was just unbelievable, the way that he had that cheeky humour about him, as if he didn't give a toss, but I'm sure he did. And I think, Mike, I didn't realise until I used to go to the States every year, and I used to watch the basketball and Michael Jordan. I know that documentaries been on, documentary films been on about him, but I've never seen a player control a game like he did. I suppose you could say that about Maradona when he was at Napoli. You know, the top players, Messi's and your Ronaldo's. But you know, in my time, it was him. But I think my all-time hero would have to be Muhammad Ali.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know that I was fortunate. I thought I was brought up in most of the best era in boxing, and especially heavyweight boxing. Probably. And you don't get these 17, 19 stone people that don't even look like as if they've been in a gym. You know, you were getting sort of 14, 15 stone people, you know, that would be able to dance a little bit and do a little bit that you've not seen before. So I was fortunate, and that was at you know, when you've got your Hagler and your Hearns and you know, what's the guy, the Mexican guy,
Roberto Duran, wasn't it?
Roberto Duran. Oh, they were fantastic to watch.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah, definitely. And then what about, the other question is, if you were to go back to, let's just say, the first day of your career, the day you signed professional, if you were to give that younger version of yourself just one piece of advice, again, from a mindset point of view, what would you say to him?
That's quite hard, really, because obviously it can be over just like that.
Yeah,
you can be up there, and the next minute you can be down there. So enjoy it while you can.
Yeah.
And it's very, very true what they say. It passes you by. You don't realise what's happening until it's over.
Yeah.
And I would sort of say that, you know, I didn't think that my career would drastically drop from the age of 28. And if you have a look at my appearances for Everton, most of my appearances at Everton were made before I was 29. I got an injury. It was only a hernia, but I was out for 10 months. And all of a sudden I've come back and that extra yard or two of pace is gone. And the game's changed because of the back pass rule. I don't really do a pre-season. I come back halfway through the season. And I think that's massively important, that especially then that you did a pre-season, you noticed that players that did suffer in the performances, and I certainly did. Yeah, and maybe come back a little bit too quickly from it, but when you've been out for 10 months and it's only a hernia, and you've only should have been out for 6 to 8 weeks, then you're quite desperate to get back as soon as possible. But that was, you know, I must admit, didn't enjoy my football as much.
Really,
yeah. From 89 onwards, and I think when I left Everton, it become more of a job than it did, you know, of loving the sport, as in playing for the club that you supported.
Yeah.
It didn't feel the same, you know, when you lose.
Yeah.
You know, when you're an Evertonian, and it'd be the same for any other side, that if you're playing as a side that you supported as a kid, it hurt you, but it didn't seem to hurt as much when I didn't sort of play for Everton and lost games. I must admit, Cardiff was one that I really sort of was fond of. We had a really good period. We got promoted. So while I was there, that was good. The fans were very, very similar to Evertonians.
Yeah, it's funny actually. A couple of athletes I've spoke to have actually said very similar to what you've just said. Just enjoy it, because it kind of goes like that.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Before I let you go, then, just for any Evertonians that are listening, how would you rate Carlo Ancelotti's start so far, and what would your expectations be for the next couple of seasons?
Well, a vast improvement. It's got to be a must. And I can see an improvement, because I think you've seen it on odd occasions that what he's trying to into the players to what he wants. And I think that, you know, he's realised the players can't do what he wants, so he's got to change it. So it's going to be an interesting summer for us. I'm thinking, as in players going out before we actually bring players in, because you can't keep spending money on players, and you know, not getting anywhere. You know, when clubs have actually played a lot less than us on players and they're winning things, we sort of come to maybe we've stagnated in a way. I think, even though we've been spending money, Mr. Mashuri can't really be happy with the money that he's been spending. And I think that, it doesn't help when you're sort of changing your managers all the time, but you can understand results is a big thing in football. If you're not winning games, there's more pressure on the manager and more pressure on the chairman to get the results from the manager, so they subsequently change the managers. But then you get an influx of other players that manager wants, and I just think that, hopefully there's good things to come at Everton. Can I see it? Well, I think when you've got the backing, you're always hopeful. But it's been, I would say, pretty shambolic over the last few years, and it's one of them that we just need somebody to come in and shake it up. And I'm hoping that Carlo's the man. I really do, because there's nothing better than Everton fans travelling away to watch you. That buzz that they actually give you when they're in the ground and not stop chanting. And I know it's going to be different when we move grounds. If we move grounds, I mean, it's gone a bit quiet in this pandemic, but it'll come back, I'm sure. When, I'm not quite sure, and how long, that's another thing. But hopefully we're going in the right direction, because you hear positive things about Carlo Ancelotti, then you hear more positive things about Carlo than you've heard about any other manager that's been at the club over the last 5 years. So I'm hoping that I'm a supporter. I want them to do well, and it's hard to sort of it's when you're an ex-player and people want you to talk about the club. It's you say good things about them, and people say, "Well, are you blind?" And then you say bad things about them, and they criticise the club, and people say, "Oh, he's always criticising." Well, I'm sorry. The people that I think I criticise the club are the people that are happy if they finish fourth in the league. I was disappointed if I finished second. So that's the mentality of people now, is that you want to be fourth or you want to be sixth. That is because they've never seen success. I've seen success, and it was a disappointment, believe me, to finish second. So, you've got to try and get that winning mentality back into Evertonians as well as the players.
Yeah. It's a brilliant way to finish, Kevin. Thanks very, very much for taking the time to come and speak to me. Really, really appreciate it.
No problem.
Thanks a lot.
All the best. Have a great night, mate. Cheers now.
Bye-bye.
There's another episode in the bag. So a massive thanks to Kevin Ratcliffe. It was brilliant to talk to somebody who's achieved so much in football. I mean, he's captained Everton to 2 league titles, an FA Cup, a European Cup Winners' Cup, the most successful captain in the club's history. So to have him on and hear some of his stories about that time, it was brilliant. So thanks a million, Kevin. You'll be able to find the podcast in the same places you always can. So if you just keep sharing, keep spreading it to people that you think might be interested in sport, or the mental side of sport particularly, and we'll keep trying to grow it. Thanks, everyone.